Hey everybody, it's Johnny Fuel. I'm going to try something a little different this time and provide some voiceover to the video today. So here we went out to Dyracuse on their opening weekend, the riding park in Rome, Wisconsin. It was just Harry and I. Right here I'm checking my camera to make sure it's on. I got a new camera. This is the GoPro Hero 8, and so it was going to be fun to experiment with that. It has some image stabilization and things, and Harry's using my old camera. Just wanted to make sure it was on, and give this a try and see what we think of the video. I'm going to post another video that has some of the footage he took and some of the footage I'm not using today, and that'll be a separate video. From there, you can kind of see the difference in the image stabilization, but what I wanted to do today was just show a loop around the trails. We also did a couple loops on the Supercross track, and then I'll end with a little bit of the trails that are not the standard trails, but some smaller kind of single track sort of trails. But this was opening weekend, and it was pretty busy. I did a little ride around the parking lot, you'll see later. There's a lot of folks that came out, probably people pent up, some pent up demand to get out. It's the midst of the whole COVID pandemic and stay at home. One of the things I noticed right away, I haven't been to Dyracuse in a while, but it was pretty soft, deep sand, and I know it gets that way. That's the terrain out here, but it was worse than I remember. I felt like I really couldn't find any good spots or get my confidence up. Now the camera here, I think I might have been aiming it just a little bit high, because normally you can see a little bit of the handlebars and part of the bike. And I'm kind of, the new camera is a little thinner, and it allows me to tip it up a little higher before, so I'm just kind of getting used to things here. The image stabilization is on the most stable, so it's really smooth, and I don't know if that's good or bad. It makes kind of for a nicer view in a sense, but it also makes the riding look easier when you're just a spectator. When you're just watching the videos, the terrain looks even easier. You don't see all the jumping around and the shakiness. Instead, it just looks like you could open up the throttle and just go, which some people can do, but not me. Over to the right there's a ski jump. You can't see it very well in this video, but they must do some events in the winter. I don't think I've ever been out here for that. So here's some pretty deep sandy ruts. I don't know if, like I said, it seems to be worse than I remember, and I don't know if it's been drier, the last few days, or if the ATVs and the four-wheelers and stuff are really just sort of grinding it into looser sand, or if the last few times I've been there I either remember wrong, or it was after some rainy days and it wasn't quite so sugary and loose, but it was. And I remember being able to just roar up this little hill here. I like this spot, and you can just kind of open it up and go like hell, but here there were more sort of whoops along the way. Made it hard to carry some speed. And then we're heading into a section where it's right after the stop here, where it's pretty loose, and it's always been that way, and there's some turns. Actually, you'll see a couple of folks pass. Get a little bit of sense of the trail here. So for those who haven't really ridden on sand, it's best to carry as much speed as you can. The faster you can go, the more stable and easier it is. That's easier said than done if you have to turn on sand. I haven't really gotten that figured out. And there's a good rider showing good technique, standing up the whole time and roaring through. And then his buddy comes through in a moment too. But sand's a funny animal. You got to just let it do its thing. I know that intellectually, but it's hard to just let it do it. It just gets a little shaky and weird, and you want control. And know, I felt like I was just fighting the bike. Here, the sand just pushed me right off the trail. I mean, it was like a hand reached out and just pulled me right off, and then before I knew it, down I went. So, picking up the bike, I'm already breathing hard. I'm not in good shape. It's the first really ride out this year. Harry was behind me. Get back up and get going. So I'd really like this camera. The image quality is amazing. I may experiment with the image stabilization. I might turn it down a little bit, dial it back somewhat. I'll just have to experiment and see. It was a beautiful day. It wasn't very hot. I think it was in the low 60s or something. Real windy though, crazy windy. You don't really notice it in the woods here. Top of this little incline here is always really loose, and there's kind of a tight corner. And I remember in the past, right after this corner, you could really, you could open it up some more, go faster. But this time I just couldn't seem to get any sense of control. It can be fun to fly through here. It's more of a straightaway, or the turns are a little more gradual. But I didn't feel like I just didn't feel like I was riding worth a darn this day. And Harry, he's behind me. He's 15 and he's getting pretty good on sand. I don't think he really felt like he was having trouble. This is usually a fun section. It's hard to see, but these ruts are a little bit bigger than they look. I don't know if it matters. In sand, you could maybe just not even look down and just go, because the ruts don't mean as much as they would if it was harder dirt. Here's a section here where you can stay to the right, and when the conditions are kind of wet, it just goes right into a big muddy bog. So we kind of looked a little bit, but then stayed to the left. I always like this little part here between all these tall trees and the shade. Here again, usually you could fly through here. It was a lot of like little whoops and bumps and things that I don't really remember before. And I don't know what causes that or how that works, if there's some grooming that needs to be done or what. And I haven't figured out how to just fly through those. I know some people can just open up the throttle and just go, but when it's really bumping you around, I'm not really quite sure what the right technique is.
You're good.
I know this guy thought he was in my way. He wasn't at all, but I was stopping to try to figure out which direction I wanted to go.
Hey, no problem. You're good.
So for some of these turns, when they're deeply rutted but it's real loose sand, it might be more psychological than anything else. You may not have to pay that much attention to those ruts at all. I don't know. Like I said, I haven't totally figured that out. I'd like to, if you have any suggestions or ideas on how to manage that, pop them in the comments. I'd love to get better at this. Now you can see that there's some yellow tape there, and you can't go over there. I think it's all washed out from heavy water, a lot of standing water. That area, when it is open, sometimes the mud gets pretty bad, and there's even some little drive-arounds, the main trail, things like that. This time it's just ribboned off completely, and you have to double back and take a little bit different route. So it must be pretty wet. I mean, not wet like it's just rained, but just a lot of standing water. It is spring, and in other areas around there on the way up driving, you could see some pretty deep standing water in farm fields and woods and things like that normally wouldn't be there. We've had 2 or 3 wet summers in a row, and hopefully this one won't be. We may be having a lot of water here in the spring, but hopefully it'll dry up. Generally, where we were, we didn't see much in the way of mud. You can see ahead here these little areas. These are kind of generally like mud pits, but at this point they look like lakes. There's quite a bit of water there, more than I typically would see. And I'm sure it varies, but I remember times when it was really just kind of a muddy, wet area, but now it just looks like a pretty good sized pond. So you can see why they might have shut down certain parts of the trail. Now there are some areas here where there's some single track right off of this part of the trail. In fact, that was a spot right there. I aimed my camera toward a little bit, looked over there, but I just took the main trail for now, just to see what it was like. This is always a favorite section that I like. Guess you can't see Harry, behind me, but he's doing just fine. Probably wondering why I'm driving so slow. Up here by this turn, I know it tends to be pretty deep and loose sand. I often struggle a little bit with that, right up until we get kind of, out of this section of trail. And on the right side here, you can see the fence, and that separates this trail from the Supercross track. So that was one full sort of loop around, using the options we chose, which I think are generally the biggest, the longest route around.
That one?
And then at this point, Harry and I decided to try out that Supercross track. So what you don't see is on the other side of that little mini track ahead of you, right ahead here next to that building is a track for kids. And on the other side of that is the they call it the motocross track, and it's deep sugary sand everywhere. But what you're seeing here is the Supercross track, and they added this later. And as I understand it, this was made out of clay they brought in, so it's not it's a totally different feel. I mean, I like it. It's a more hard pack, but it's a track, and I usually do more trail riding, and the track has a lot of jumps and things, and it's not really my style, but I wanted to go around it a time or two with Harry and just check it out. I didn't want to try jumping anything really much here because I didn't know the track yet, and things have changed. Right around this corner here, there used to be a nice double jump I liked, but that seems to be smoothed out for the moment, and they got a little bit of a tabletop here instead. And some of these jumps, they have kind of funny lips on them, like they get a little bumpy as you approach them. So I don't know if that can be sort of groomed better for people who really want to try to take off better or what. So Harry and I are doing a second loop around. At this point, I was trying to catch up a little bit, see if I could. I'm not sure how much Harry's pushing it. But he's getting to an age where he's getting, better than me at some aspects of certain kinds of terrain. And that's just going to get worse as I get older and he gets older. This Supercross track was pretty well used all day by both motorcycles and ATVs. Some of the riders that come out here are really amazing. And so we turned off the track here and went back. I think we were both surprised at how thirsty we were after that loop around. But now I'm going to show, there's a section here where we just took trail, more single track trail, not this wide trail, but I don't think these are really official. It looks like some people just kind of made them. And I really like this kind of terrain. It's a bit slower, more technical. And I don't know if I'm really better at it or not, but I think I enjoy it. And with practice, it's the kind of terrain I think I'm more attracted to. There's a number of these around the riding park too. And some of them you just might stumble across or go hunting for. I think people have just kind of made them. Spider webs all over this area. So after struggling with all that sand, the single track was a lot of fun. The first time I went up to Dyracuse, I'm thinking about it now, it was probably about 35 years ago, between 30 and 35 years ago. And I think at that time, all they had was the motocross track. And I don't have video of the motocross track, but it's much like these those sandy trails, but it's just really wide in the form of a track, and it's deep sand. And I think that's all that was here. Maybe there was some trail, but it was mainly that track. And I remember my father and I came out here together, and we didn't know anything about riding on sand, and we went around it a time or two and just struggled. And we kept going slower and slower, trying to get our footing and get some sense of control. But that's exactly the opposite of what you want to do on sand. I think we both were fed up and thought nuts to this and left, and we didn't come back for 25 years. Now with the internet and YouTube and everything else, you can learn techniques a lot better. We didn't know what we were doing, and we just struggled on. And we had dual sport bikes, so we probably didn't have the best tires and setup either. I'm sure that didn't help. We didn't really know what we were doing, but we did the best we could. And I think the main mistake we made is we just kept trying to go slower to get control. Now here I popped out. I think this is where I did kind of a loop around the parking lot. I just thought it was interesting how busy it was. Again, it was opening weekend. It wasn't the opening day, and you can see all that dust flying around. It was really windy that day. One of the windiest days I've actually seen. And the parking lot, is pretty full. I mean, people are parked way back. And people come. I think they open at 10, and a lot of people get there right away at 10, and then they're gone by noon or something. We didn't get there till I think after between like noon and 1 o'clock or something, and rode around for 2-3 hours, taking breaks and things, and then took off. And by the time we left, a lot fewer people. So this just gives you a sense of some of the flooding in the parking lot, where people were parked, and just how busy it was. There was somebody parked near us too that had some small kids and a couple small ATVs, and they were just doing donuts in the parking lot for like an hour. I don't think they want you to do that, and it was kicking up dust and annoying some people, but that's what they were doing. Wasn't really blowing towards us, so I didn't say anything. So I'm going to finish out this video with a little bit more of the trail footage. This is some section by what become some ponds or little miniature lakes.
Yep.
I got my black front fender there. Got all new black plastics this time, and my old graphics were getting kind of chewed up, so I replaced them. But I decided to get some black plastics at the same time and just go for a different look. So that's kind of fun. Yeah, this single track is nice. I really like riding through this kind of terrain. I always have. So there's some variety here. I just wish there was some areas where you could go a little faster that weren't such deep sand. Maybe more variety, but there's, I think too by the time I left, I had gotten a little bit better, a little more used to things, reset some of my expectations, and maybe a little bit of practice, helped. But the main thing is you just got to let the bike move around a little bit underneath you. Sand has a mind of its own, and it's just a funny thing. But it also can really buck you and throw you around a little bit too. I still remember one time riding in some deep sand on just a straightaway, and I was going fine at a pretty good clip, and all of a sudden it just pulled me right off into the side. And luckily there wasn't a tree there, but it was just weird how sand could do that. And that's kind of rare. I haven't had that happen again, but it's a funny feeling. It makes you uneasy. Harry noticed some of these areas here. These little lips here, these little whoops go way up and way down pretty dramatically, and the camera kind of hides it, but they can be kind of extreme. This time, of course, I'm following Harry. He had scouted out some of these trails ahead of me. Harry's got all new gear.
That's cool. What's that?
You want to keep following it somewhere?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, he got new shirt and pants and gloves. Things match. Actually, there was somebody there at the park who had the exact same outfit as Harry, except he also had the matching helmet, because there's apparently a helmet that goes right along with that color scheme from Fox, or whatever the company was. He got that makes the clothing, and he also had a Husqvarna, and he was really good too. I don't think I have footage of him. But he was a good rider. He was on these trails a little bit with us too, but I was teasing Harry later that he had the full setup, but he also had the helmet. Which reminds me, I know he feels like he needs a new helmet because his visor's not staying put. The little screw hole's stripped or something, and it keeps flopping around on him. He's getting sick of it. And that was, oh, there's that guy with the Husqvarna right there. And we just passed him, so you got just a glimpse. He might pass us. I think he might have taken a slightly different route, and he roared through these trails. Yeah, there he is. I don't know what bike he's got. It looked like a newer Husqvarna like we have, but I'm not sure if I couldn't catch the size, and I wasn't sure what year, but I could tell from the graphics it was a newer version. I think I like this smoothness of this camera through this kind of terrain. Not sure about the other stuff, but again, I'm going to just experiment some more with it. So once we finish this section here and head back to the parking lot is where the video will end, and that'll be it for today. But I thought I'd try just talking through it. Let me know what you think. Give me your feedback. Usually I just have instrumental, in the background, but if you like this, let me know. I'm not sure I have always that much to say, but I'm just giving it a try. So with that, thanks everybody. If you like it, press the thumbs up or the like button, and then look for the next video.